everyone, my name is Mads, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this video which is the first update on my Balancing the Books challenge. So in case you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here, but a couple of months ago I think, I set myself a new challenge basically to help me achieve one of my reading goals for the year, and I said it then, I'll say it again, the chances of actually achieving this by the end of the year are basically zero, but we can still try and make progress towards it. So what this challenge is balancing the books. Very simply, my goal for the year was to read more books than I bought. And to clarify that, it is lowering my TBR. So special editions, extra editions of books, things like that, doesn't matter. And I'm also only referring to my physical TBR, so ebooks we're not really considering at all. When I set this challenge, I think it was the end of June, I had bought 41 more books than I had read. So my TBR had gone up by 41 books, which is not good. Very much the opposite of the direction we were hoping to head in. And I said in that video that I would basically update you every month, 6 weeks. It's been 2 months, close enough, about what I've read, what I've bought. It'll be a combination of a wrap up and a haul, and some numbers of how we're going with this challenge. It has now been 2 months since I filmed that, so all of my July and August reading and hauling has happened, and I'm here to update you on how it's all gone. The way I'm going to structure this video is we're going to go through 1 month at a time and basically run through everything I read and everything I bought, and they will be in the order that it happened. So it won't be all the read books and all the bought books, they'll be interleaved in the order of which it happened. And we'll do a little bit of a running total. I'm sure you'll see some lovely graphics on the screen, and then some ending numbers of where we're up to with this challenge. Warning, it's not as good as we would like. In terms of some general reflections over the last couple of months, I'll probably do a bit more at the end, but my sort of feelings at the moment are I'm really enjoying having this challenge in mind. I've said it before, I said it in the previous video, book buying bans categorically do not work for me. There are books that come out that I've been anticipating for ages and want to read. Sometimes I'm just mooching in a bookstore and come across something I've never heard of and really want to buy it. But what this challenge I feel like is achieving is I am buying things with the intent to read them soon, much more often. And that's definitely, I wouldn't say a trap I fell into. As I say, I'll do more reflections at the end, but I do have a bad habit of buying something even though I know I'm not going to read it anytime soon. Sometimes that is still absolutely the right choice for me, especially if you find a good deal or there's an edition that's going to go out of print. But I am enjoying reading the books I buy a lot quicker because I really enjoy reading a book when it's new, but when you're bringing in more books than you read, you cannot do that for everything, and then you're definitely not touching the old backlist. So it's very counterintuitive. But with that, let's get into July. So starting off July, we start strong. This is helped by the fact I did a reading challenge for a week of trying to read a lot in the last week before I started my new job. I have a vlog of that up there. And so it was a pretty strong start. So we started with a reading, which was Last Gender Volume 3. This is the final book in a manga series I really enjoyed. And this sort of has different vignettes of different characters at this bar in Japan. And it talks about all sorts of different things to do with gender, sexuality, and sexual freedom. Very interesting. Wasn't my favourite in the series, but glad to have wrapped it up nonetheless. I then read When Among Crows by Veronica Roth, which has become like a new favourite book. This is a teeny tiny little novella following the myth of Baba Yaga and basically this man who is on a quest to find her, because if you find her, she will grant you a wish, and another group of people that are sort of opposing that for various reasons. As I say, it's very short, it's set in Chicago. I really enjoyed it and absolutely want to reread it at some point, but 5 stars, strongly enjoyed. So glad I picked this up on a bit of a whim. I then read The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Bluebear. This is a book that I read, I think, part of when I was 12, 13-ish. It's kind of a middle grade YA-ish story, and it's huge, but quite a quick read. There's not that many words, there's lots of illustrations. This follows the 13 and a half lives of this animal called Captain Bluebear, and basically it's just this big adventure journey. It's just one big adventure journey of all the things that happen to him and all the things he sees and does. That's literally all it is. It's great. I really enjoyed it. It got a little bit long, a little bit drawn out in places, but it was fun. Nice one to revisit, and I think for the first time actually complete. After that, I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This is a romantasy story which everyone talks about is like the Hunger Games with vampires. I see it, it kind of is. This is one of Christie's favourites, so I decided to finally get to it, and shockingly did really enjoy it. Don't normally get on with romantasy, so was very nervous, but really enjoyed this. Loved the characters, loved the relationship. As you will see, I enjoyed enough to continue the series, but this was a strong start. 4 books in a row, read, 0 books bought. We started very well. However, on the note of wanting to continue that series, I did not own The Ashes and the Starcursed King. So I did go and order The Ashes and the Starcursed King in a not matching edition because you can't get the self-pub versions anymore. So I have the regular hardback that's come out, which, to be fair, is absolutely gorgeous. So I can't really complain. And yes, this was the first purchase of the month, but worthwhile to continue a series. I then read 6 Scorched Roses, which is the novella that comes between The Serpent of the Wings of Night and The Ashes of the Starcursed King, and super fun little novella, but read it on ebook, so it doesn't count towards my read totals. You'll see the numbers have not moved because I am only talking about my physical TBR when I'm doing this. This may have been an oversight in how I planned this, but it's very much a case of ebooks do not take up space. I very rarely read on ebook. I only do it when it's like way cheaper or when I'm commuting on the tube, but that's very often a book I also own physically. So it kind of doesn't apply to me as much. I only really buy ebooks in the 99p deals that Kindle do each month, and I get maybe 2 or 3 max, and they don't take up shelf space, so I don't care. They can just sit there. So ebooks do not count towards buying, which is great, but they also therefore don't count towards reading, which is very sad. The next book I received that is adding to my hauled total is When the World Tips Over by Jan D. Nelson. This was very kindly sent to me by Walker because I am a massive Jan D. Nelson fan. They actually sent me I'll Give You the Sun and The Sky Is Everywhere as well in the new editions, which are absolutely gorgeous. I believe these are the US covers originally, but they seem to have brought them over to the UK. I'll Give You the Sun is one of my favourite books. I've been meaning to reread it for ages, but not got around to it yet. But I just loved this book when I read it, and I've been dying to read The Sky Is Everywhere. So was thrilled to receive When the World Tips Over. I cannot wait for this. Jan D. Nelson is the absolute ruler of YA. They're such like hard-hitting and interesting books that are written in such gorgeous ways, and I really can't wait to get to this one. But this is the only one that counts toward the haul because I already own both of these, so they do not touch my TBR, but this one does. I then went and bought 2 manga on a little trip to Waterstones and got Birds of Shangri-La Volume 3, which is the 3rd volume in one of my favourite manga series, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. And I picked up the 2nd volume of Boys Run the Riot, which is another manga series I absolutely love. This follows a main character who is a trans man and is basically figuring out how to present how he wants to at school and how to get people to recognise him for who he is, and ends up starting a fashion brand, and it's just fantastic and very enjoyable. Highly recommend. I then got Days at the Murasaki Bookshop from one of my lovely friends. This was a congrats on getting a new job, good luck with your first week kind of thing, which was so sweet, but was not one I was anticipating bringing into my house and did not help my stats. But I can't really begrudge it because I'm super excited. I've heard the most amazing things about this. It's obviously gone completely viral. It's huge. Really intrigued to pick this up sometime soon. I don't know much about it other than it's set at a bookshop, and I believe Jade read it very recently and was saying it follows that theme of people kind of finding what they need in different places. So excited to give it a go. But again, does add to the TBR. I then did some good reading, however, 2 of them were rereads. So I read Birds of Shangri-La Volume 1, Birds of Shangri-La Volume 2, and Shock Horror, Birds of Shangri-La Volume 3. I reread these 2 with Christy because we love this series so much, so that we could read Volume 3, because Volume 2 came out almost 2 years ago now. It's been a long time, so we felt like a reread was in order. This, I mentioned, is one of my favourite manga series. It's a strange premise, but somehow is one of the most heartfelt, gorgeous manga series I've ever read, which is not what you'd necessarily expect. Very simply, this follows an island where it's off the coast of, I want to say Thailand, but I'm not completely sure, somewhere that basically is a brothel on this island, and all the prostitutes are gay men, and we're following a character who's gone through a very hard time, and he goes there to basically become someone that works, not as a prostitute, but as someone that preps the prostitute for their work. And he is straight, he believes. And it somehow turns into this really beautiful romance. As I say, it's really, really heartfelt. I love this series so much. Yeah, it's always a hard one to pitch because it feels like it should just be basically shameless smut, but it's really not. It's really gorgeous and covers some beautiful things. So I read all 3 of these, and this is the only one that takes the TBR down because these were rereads. So it's only one, but we'll take it. The next thing I finished reading, though I had started it quite a while before, was Ashes in the Star-Cursed King, which makes it very worthwhile buying it. I'm really enjoying buying and reading within the same month. It's very satisfying. I loved this as well. Probably not quite as much as Serpent and the Wings of Night, to be honest, but still really, really enjoyed it and feel like it was a nice close out of this main relationship in preparation for the next book, which is coming out, which follows a slightly different character and their romance. I want to say that comes out this year. Will I get to it this year? I kind of doubt it. I then read Boys Run the Riot Volume 2, Success, another one that was read in the same month it was hauled. I've already said about this series, I love it. I continued it. Another one that went on and off the TBR in very quick succession. I then received another very generous gift from a friend, which is You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. This is a story, I want to say it's in New York, yeah, in Brooklyn, and I think it just follows the typical someone in their early 20s, mid-20s, somewhere there, who moves to a new city and kind of is doing adult life for the first time and is queer, and it's potentially a bit messy. One of my favourite genres of books. But again, I'd not accounted for receiving this in how many books I was buying and reading because I didn't expect my friends to gift me books. So adds to the TBR and was not expected, so did not help my numbers. After that, I read Honeybees and Distant Thunder, which is a book I've been meaning to read for like well over a year and finally got to, which is very exciting. And this follows 3 or 4 people who are competing in this huge international piano competition set in Japan. And it basically just follows how their stories all converge, each of their histories, their relationship to music. I love books about music, I've said this many times, and I love books about music competitions and performance, so I really enjoyed this, but I will say, more so than most of this books, although this has a big character focus, it does have a huge focus on the music itself. There is quite a lot of technical language, there is a lot of very emotive language about how people feel when music is being played, when they're hearing it, when they're playing, whatever it may be. And I will say there were long stretches in this book where you are watching someone's performance and it is just people experiencing it. And that is great, I loved that, but I will admit may not be for everyone. But really enjoyed this, very glad to have finally got to it. And yeah, it was a fantastic read. And then the final book I read was Wildfire. This was again a reread. This is the second book in the series of romance by Hannah Grace, which starts with Icebreaker. Daydream came out in August, so I was rereading Wildfire in preparation to that. They are not like completely related, but I love this book and wanted an easy read whilst on holiday, so it was kind of the perfect time to do it anyway. I loved it. It doesn't take anything off the TBR, but it was fun. So where does that all leave us for the end of July? At the end of July, I had read 8 books that counted towards reducing my TBR and brought in 6 that added to the TBR. So overall, down 2. That is only, I think, the second month in the year where I had negative TBR count, so may not be huge. Doesn't make a big dent in the 41, but I will take it nonetheless. So as of the end of July, we had got down to plus 39 on my TBR for the entire year. So let's see if August was any better. So we started August, similar to July, started strong, and I read Spy Family Volume 9 and Spy Family Volume 10 in the first few days of the month. This is another of my favourite manga series, very basic premise for anyone that somehow doesn't know. This follows a spy whose mission is to get to this certain important person, and he decides the route to do this is through his son. So this spy adopts a child to go to the same school so he can get close to the family. Turns out, child is a telepath, so can read his mind and knows that he is a spy. And then to complete the picture of them being a convincing family, he marries a woman and kind of sells it as he is this single dad who has a child, and to stop getting pressure and to make sure she's raised well, he wants a wife. And she has secrets she's trying to hide, so she's like, fantastic, this is a good arrangement for me as well. He does not know she's an assassin. Again, child, telepath, does know she's an assassin. It's chaos incarnate, it's fantastic. So I read volume 9 and 10 of this. I have a couple more to read, but I'm very nearly up to date, which is very exciting for quite a long series. I then read Arch Conspirator by Veronica Roth. Having read and enjoyed When Among Crows, I decided to read another novella by her, which I've actually owned for far longer and never got round to. I enjoyed this, but nothing like as much. This, I think, is an Oedipus retelling, and I know nothing about Oedipus. It felt like this was trying to be a dystopian take on like the bodily autonomy of women and family dynamics and some sort of things. I can't even really remember, which I feel like says quite a lot. Though I will also note I was very ill with COVID at the beginning of the month, so that may not have helped. And yeah, this one just didn't hit for me. It felt like it was both underdeveloped and a bit slow. Not sure how you do both, but it was okay. Following that, however, given the fact I was ill with COVID, Christy did a lovely thing and sent me a book, which was Stars in Your Eyes by Case and Calendar. This is a romance book which I've been dying to read since it came out, since Christy came across it, and she knew that, you know, ill with COVID, probably gonna need something fun, a nice pick-me-up. However, I didn't know she was gonna do this, and so had done the same thing for myself and ordered myself Boys Run the Riot Volume 3 because I enjoyed Volume 1 and 2 so much. I've already spoken about this. Fantastic story about queer people starting a fashion brand, and it's lots of conversations about rebelling against society and living as yourself and all of that. It's great. So I got this for myself. So from starting really strong, we're now almost even Stevens, which was not quite how I anticipated the first, I think, few days of the month going. However, in my illness-induced state, I did read Stars in Your Eyes. I really, really enjoyed this. I didn't love it as much as I was anticipating, but this follows two, I say boys, men, they're like early 20s, who are working in the film industry, both queer, and have various things going on, and they end up getting cast in this movie as the two romantic interests. And one of them is known to be like the bad boy of Hollywood, and the other is like golden child being typecast through and through as like only nice characters. And they're both kind of trying to break out of that bubble. And the kind of premise for this book is the bad boy character has basically been really rude in an interview just before they start filming about the other character. And so there's kind of a big rivalry, they kind of don't like each other, and then they end up getting really close and forming a romance. But the one thing I'll say for this, although it is a romance book, it has a huge focus on how damaging it can be to be in the spotlight and how bad that industry can be in certain ways. So trigger warnings big time for alcohol abuse, drug abuse, sexual assault, rape, all of that. And on page. It is not just spoken about in the past, it is on page actively happening. I did not know that going in at all. I was expecting fun, fluffy romance. Wasn't quite that, but nonetheless was very good. I'm very glad to have read it. I then, because I have no restraint, bought Boys Run the Riot Volume 4. There's only 4 volumes in this series, so I was sort of like, if I'm buying Volume 3, I'm just gonna buy Volume 4 so that I can just finish out the series pretty soon. I've never claimed to be good at self-restraint. That's why we're here. That's why this challenge exists. I then also bought The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, so it had to be done, and follows 2 characters who were together many years ago, childhood friends, got together, split up, and when they split up, they were meant to be going on this kind of wine and food tour through lots of Europe, and obviously didn't go, so they each got a voucher to go again at another time, and accidentally, without knowing it, book on to go at the exact same time. So end up reconnecting on this tour and a romance ensues. It had to be done. It's the new Casey McQuiston, and I will just read everything that they write, honestly, at this point. From here on out, I do some reading though, which is good, because we're currently completely even on books bought and read, which is, again, not quite where I was hoping to be at that point in the month. But I read Boys Run the Riot Volume 3. I've spoken about it at length. Really enjoyable, such a great series. Another satisfying reading it in the same month as buying it. And on the same trend, I read The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. So I've given you the premise, but in terms of my thoughts on this book, a couple things I will say. One, it is messy characters. They are not perfect, they make mistakes, their thought processes are a bit chaotic. There is neurodivergence through and through this, very, very much that kind of thought process. I really enjoy that in a book most of the time. I know some people don't, so know that going in. The one other thing I will say, just because this was big for me when reading it, I'm gonna preface what I'm about to say with, I don't know whether I kind of made this up or not, but I'm gonna say it anyway. My perception of how this had been marketed, advertised, talked about from the day it was first announced that Casey was writing it, was that this was not male-female, not male-male, not female-female. There were gender non-conforming characters in this. That was absolutely my assumption, that at least one, if not both of these characters would be gender non-conforming, non-binary, something in that sphere. And when I started reading it, it became apparent pretty early on that Kit was likely cis, bi man, and it was seeming like Theo was going to be non-binary and was assigned female at birth. Great, loved that, was so excited for that kind of specific pairing. Funnily enough, as a non-binary assigned female at birth person, that is just the epitome of like what I would want to read, and I was so excited for it. And then I noticed, you know, a couple times towards the beginning, Theo was being referred to with she, her pronouns, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I went and looked at every post on Casey's Instagram story about this book and noticed that in the blurb and otherwise, like, pronouns were never used for Theo. And I'm not gonna lie, I wondered for a long time, have they actually just been really quiet about the fact that this is just a male-female romance, which is fine. We love bi for bi, queer romance, male-female pairing. Absolutely love that. Fantastic. I felt a bit shortchanged because I was like, this is not how this book was marketed. At least from my perception, and again, this is why I'm prefacing with I may have made it up because I now can't find any evidence of that. And the thing that always springs to mind when I think about this is when Casey first announced they were writing their next book, someone said, is it going to be male, male, or female, female? Because at that point, the books they had out were Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is obviously 2 men, and One Last Stop, which is obviously 2 women. And Casey's response was, why do you think those are the only 2 options, like gender non-conforming people exist? And so I kind of, the impression I'd got from that point on, the way I'd read all the marketing, was that that was what we were getting. To be clear, that is the case. But it is spoken about very late into the book. Like, very late into the book. Which is not necessarily a problem. It doesn't take away the character's identity. It doesn't take away the truth of the matter. But I think because I spent the first 2/3, if not longer, of this book wondering if I had kind of been missold and was going to be really disappointed, it impacted my enjoyment. That was a really long rant, I do apologise, but can confirm this does have a non-binary character. They are an absolute legend, and I want to read this again knowing that, instead of like second guessing and literally looking for clues. Anytime they mentioned their hair or their clothes or their feelings, I was like, but do we mean this in a vibes way? Or do we mean this in like a gender way? And I was analysing, I had a microscope, all of my friends were getting the running commentary of like, am I being missold? Am I about to be really mad? I was not in fact mad. I don't know how to rate this book because of it, but super fun, super chaotic, queer as hell. Enjoy. I'm gonna shut up now. After that, we do have another purchase, which is Moonbound by Robin Sloan, but this does not add to my TBR as I already owned an edition of this book. But when I was in Forbidden Planet and saw they had a signed copy and then found out that they were also numbered and limited with a gorgeous little signature page, and, you know, underneath the dust jacket it has the little constellation, I had no self-restraint. But this does not add to my TBR, as I do already own it. The fact I've not read it yet, however, is a problem, but I wanted to talk about it because it's pretty and I'm excited. This is the new Robin Sloan book. Robin Sloan wrote Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore and Sourdough, both of which are books I absolutely loved. and I'm really, really excited to read a kind of sci-fi fantasy-esque thing, which I believe falls into the maybe cozy vibes, which I'm not always a fan of, but I'm excited to try it. And it's just pretty. I just love this cover. Next up, I read Light from Uncommon Stars by Raika Aoki. This is another one that had been on my TBR for way, way, way too long, like 3 years. I did not realize this came out 3 years ago until I went to pick it up. And it is worth noting, after reading the pairing, I was just super busy, had a lot going on, and I basically got into, I can't even call it a reading slump, I just stopped reading. Basically, I had about 10 days between finishing that book and my final Eras Tour concert for Taylor Swift, and I just became a bracelet making machine, and that was all I did every evening, didn't touch a book, and then it took me a while to get back to reading after that. I found it really difficult, having completely broken the habit and being busy and tired, etc. And was really struggling to know what to pick up. Nothing was catching my eye. And then it was Mary's Many Books on Instagram, who I'll link down below, who has a quite frankly hilarious series on Instagram Reels where she sits, has a bottle of alcohol and a shot glass, and her husband, partner, not sure, hands her a book off her bookshelves, and if she's read it, she'll talk about it. If she's not, she takes a shot. And I enjoy it way more than I should, and I can't remember exactly what she said, but in it, one of the books she was handed was Light from Uncommon Stars, and I think she was just basically like violin, prodigy, sci-fi-ish, deal with the devil kind of things, and I was like, yeah, I want to read that. So I did, and I really, really enjoyed it. This does follow Katrina, who is a trans girl, which is also cool, had no idea, knew it was vaguely queer, didn't know that, big wins, who is a fantastic violin player and is being basically kicked out of home because of being trans. Her family won't accept her, and she's on the run. And there is this other character who made a deal with the devil 49-ish years ago that basically she could keep her soul if she sells 7 other souls to them. And what she basically does is she finds violin players who have a lot of potential, who want to be phenomenal, and makes the deal with them of she will teach them, and then once they reach success, their soul will be given to the devil. And she needs 1 more soul, she finds Katrina, it goes from there. There's also a big sci-fi plot going on, and there's donuts. That's all I can say. It's great, really enjoyable, kind of cozy vibes, very nice like family found family vibes, with yeah, loads of interesting commentary on a lot of different topics. Next up, I read Boys Run the Riot Volume 4, completing out the series. I've said it a million times in this video. I love this series, really enjoyed it, highly, highly recommend it. It's 4 volumes, it's not super long, and it's great, and deserves all the accolade that it has. And I would love if there were more in this series, but I can see it served its purpose. Author probably wants to do something else, but read this one as well. And another satisfying, read it in the month I hauled it, versus 3.5 years later. And then the final book I will talk about is Daydream by Hannah Grace, the 3rd book in the Icebreaker series, which I bought on release day, had it pre-ordered for 26th, 27th of August, and a day later had read. This follows Henry and Hallie, and Henry is very much a fan favourite character. He was very much my favourite character. He is one of the friendship group that we see in the first 2 books. Like a lot of romance series, this passes around like different friends that you've seen, and you get the other couples appearing as well, which is really nice. You get to see your characters even though you're following a different romance. And Henry was a firm favourite for me, as well as everyone else. And this is basically his romance with Hallie. And the basic premise is Henry is struggling with a lot of different things, but specifically this one class, which he just cannot get on with the teacher. And Hallie loves this teacher, loves this class, is a typical help everyone kind of character. And they meet and become friends, and she's kind of tutoring him and helping him complete this class. And then he finds out that she is trying to write a book, a romance novel, and feels like she is not able to do it because she's never properly dated anyone. She's a virgin, and they go into a lot about the fact that that's an entire societal concept and not a real thing, but anyway. And so he agrees to give her experiences, take her out on dates, woo her to like help her write her book so that they're helping each other. Great. It's gorgeous. It turns into a romance, shock horror. It is another spot on Hannah Grace of amazing romance from a fantastic friendship, with lovely characters who also have a lot of stuff going on that they are dealing with, but that is not the focal point of the books. It's a big aspect, but you're not focusing on their trauma and their troubles. You are focusing on them and their relationship. Obviously, those struggles will play into the relationship, but it's much more of that side of it versus the big focus. But the one thing in this I really, really loved was, as I say, Henry, firm favourite character already. And Hannah Grace did confirm in the front of this book that he is undiagnosed autistic ADHD, and she had written him that way, and basically speaks about the fact that she's been on her own journey with realising that about herself and had already written it into Henry, and so it's a very prominent part of this book. She did make the active choice that he is undiagnosed, he is not aware of these things, and does not go through a diagnosis journey in this book, and may not ever, because that wasn't the plot she wanted to write. And rightly, a lot of people go undiagnosed their entire lives and are very successful, and they find coping mechanisms and they make it work. And I really love that she took that perspective, but as someone with ADHD, it was really, really nice to hear someone's internal monologue that so closely matches my own in so many ways. And I just loved him so much as a character, and I feel like I'm really glad she made the point that, like, it is that, even if the words aren't necessarily used in the text, because it's not something he's aware of or knows of, but nonetheless it's confirmed, you know, representation, etc, etc. Really great. And the other really lovely aspect of all of that is Hallie has younger siblings who have ADHD, and so she's very familiar with it, and that's kind of why she ends up tutoring him so successfully, because she knows how his brain works in some ways more than he does. She knows like hacks and has had experience with that, and so can really work with him in his way. So really lovely, really enjoyed, great way to end the month. So with that, to wrap up August, I can confirm I read 9 books off of my TBR and received 5 that added to my TBR, which puts us at a net -4 on my TBR, which is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that for 1 month's progress, especially as I had a 2-week stint in the middle of the month where I didn't read at all. And that also puts us for the goal for the whole year at +35. It's not great, but we'll take it. It's progress. Am I going to read 35 more books than I buy in the next 4 months? No way. Absolutely no way. And on top of that, getting into some sort of reflections on the first 2 months of this challenge and how I'm feeling doing it, I said at the beginning, I'm really enjoying buying books when I want to read them, and therefore reading them very quickly. And I feel like you can really see that when you look at, for example, all the books I hauled in July. Read this one, haven't read that yet, but it was an arc I wasn't expecting to receive. I haven't read these 2, but again, they're 2 books I wasn't expecting, they were gifts. And I've read both of those in July. And then even better, in August, all 5 books that I received, I read in August. And I feel like it's a really lovely balance of getting books in that are new and exciting and really do reinvigorate my zest for reading. And I've always found this when I'm in a bit of a reading slump, I buy more books and then eventually one of those will grab my eye. That novelty factor, the new and exciting, especially being ADHD, is really critical. And it's a frustration that is how I get myself excited for reading. But then I go so far with that then I'm not reading as many as I'm buying. Result being, eventually, the new books aren't new and then they sit and they gather dust. So I love that this is getting that balance between new and exciting, keeping me reading, and space to pick up random books I've owned for 3 years and not got around to. And yeah, it's been really, really lovely. I've really enjoyed it. I feel more in control. Will this continue forever? Probably not. I've got Christmas, I've got birthdays, I get books in different ways. But nonetheless, for now, this is feeling really, really good. Again, I'm not going to complete this challenge by the end of the year, but I feel like I am building a really good basis for how I approach buying books, how my reading's going, that hopefully if I can continue this next year, I'm assuming I will set the same goal of reading more than I buy in the sense of TBR, and hopefully I'll actually do it. But that is episode 1. So overall, the first 2 months of doing this, I have read 17 books, I have hauled 11, which means I've brought that overall TBR from 41 down to 35. I say TBR, the TBR is still huge, I'll have the numbers here, but the net TBR change has gone from plus 41 to plus 35. I'm really happy with that. It's feeling really good. I'm really excited to continue. But that is it for this video. Thanks for sticking around. I will continue to do these probably a bit more often because I can see how long I've been filming and it's way too long to go through this many books, many of which I enjoyed. But nonetheless, thank you for watching. Let me know down below how your reading and hauling is going. Have you bought anything good? Have you bought anything and read it straight away? Let me know down below. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more from me, but that is it for this one, so bye, and I'll see you in the next one.